In today's video, I'm diving into codependent relationships, the 5 core symptoms, warning signs, and what to do about it. Let's go. Hey friends, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Tamie M. Joyce. I'm the founder of Tamie M Coaching and the creator of the Freedom class and the Ascension class. Please take a second to say hello and introduce yourself in the comments section below. And don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss a new video. So let's talk about codependent relationships, specifically the 5 core symptoms, the warning signs, and, like I said, what to do about it. You know, it's really interesting. I talk to women every day who, based on what they share with me, it's pretty clear, what ails them boils down to unresolved codependency issues. Yet many of them have no ever-loving idea what it actually means to be codependent until we start talking. The majority of these women are super intelligent, high functioning, and are quite literally knocking it out of the park in many areas of their lives. But their relationships continue to be problematic, no matter what they do or how hard they try. And this includes family relationships, friendships, relationships at work, as well as romantic relationships. So today, I'm going to talk about the 5 core symptoms of codependency. Again, what the warning signs are, and most importantly, what you can do about it. The important thing to know up front is this. Recovery from codependency is fundamentally about 2 things. It's about growing up and it's about waking up. It's about becoming conscious, awake, and aware. It's about taking radical responsibility for ourselves, our well-being, and the quality of our lives. And I can tell you that it is this specific process of healing and recovery that absolutely revolutionized my own life many, many years ago now. So first and foremost, what is it? What exactly is codependency? Because that's the question I get asked all the time. And in my view, with decades of research and recovery under my belt, my best definition of codependency, first and foremost, is that it is a fundamental breakdown in the relationship with ourselves, which then extends to maladaptive ways of relating to and with others. That really is the bottom line of it. It's a breakdown in the relationship we have with ourselves, beginning in early childhood. In fact, P.M. Melody, who is well known and respected as a preeminent authority, lecturer, and educator in the fields of codependent and addictive relationships, she's literally a pioneer in the recovery movement. She describes codependency as being a disease process that originates in childhood as a result of early childhood wounding and trauma. Now, I'm paraphrasing there a little bit, but that's essentially what she says. It is, again, a disease process that stems from childhood trauma. Whether that be benign neglect, outright abuse, attachment trauma, abandonment, or any of the varying degrees of abuse and neglect we humans experience in our dysfunctional family systems. Now, what's interesting about some of the women I speak with on a regular basis is many of them don't even recognize that they were, in fact, neglected or sometimes even abused as children. Because for all intents and purposes, a lot of stuff might have been done right. Parents who were well-intended, doing the best they could with the resources they had, nonetheless dropped the ball in ways that caused enough harm that these codependent patterns are not only set up, but are also perpetuated in our adult lives. And that's not all of us, for sure. Not all of us had that experience of legitimately well-intended parents who merely dropped the ball. But for a lot of people, that's the truth of their experience. And for that reason, they feel as if there's nothing specific to point to, except that they can't quite figure out why their relationships are so problematic, or why they not only feel destabilized and crazy a lot of the time, but also overly responsible for everyone else, how they feel, what they want, what they need, as well as feeling overly responsible for everything that goes wrong. And like it or not, when we're raised in a dysfunctional family environment, what happens is our parents or primary caretakers tend to be emotionally, spiritually, psychologically, and sometimes even physically unavailable, absent, literally, even when they're in the room. And as a result, the child grows up in what we can politely call a less than nurturing home environment, where again, the parent or primary caretakers are unable to attach to and adequately nurture the child in a consistent, healthy, loving, and functional way. In a way that causes the child to grow into an individual with a healthy sense of self, a healthy sense of self-esteem and self-worth, an identity that is solid and intact. And simply by virtue of growing up surrounded by what is often, at the very least, emotionally unavailable people, codependency is born as a means of surviving the environment we find ourselves in. Whether or not you had a narcissistic parent or caretakers and people in a position of authority over you who were empathy impaired and felt entitled to either neglect or harm you, or both, or for whatever reason you had parents or caretakers who were legitimately busy dealing with, for example, sick aging parents themselves, parents who were workaholics, or parents, a parent even, a single parent who felt the need to work 2 or 3 jobs just to keep up. Never mind the parents who were actually active alcoholics or addicts. Either way, how emotionally available is someone in any of those scenarios necessarily going to be for their kids? Especially if we're talking a few decades back where people didn't have the information that we have today. So again, codependency stems from childhood trauma. Now, whether that's benign neglect or outright abuse from well-intended parents, caretakers, or not, or somewhere in between. Again, these issues are never black or white. There's a spectrum, a continuum. Regardless, the point is, this is how codependency is born within the individual. And basically what happens is, because of the trauma, whether it's one traumatic experience or a series of traumatic experiences, whatever it is that happened that you endured as a child, as a survival mechanism, the precious, authentic, true self, the inner child, quite literally goes into hiding in the psyche. This aspect of ourselves dives deep into the subconscious and goes into hiding in order to survive, to not have to feel the full extent of the pain of his or her environment and what they're experiencing in that environment. And the bottom line is, when the true authentic essence, the inner child, which is now the wounded inner child, goes into hiding, a false codependent persona emerges. And that false self, that false persona, proceeds to go through life relating to self and others and the world at large in what is often extremely maladaptive ways, in dysfunctional codependent ways, and often progressively so. Again, as a means of survival. This is where people-pleasing comes from. This is where seeking external validation and approval comes from. This is where overly responsible attitudes and behavior come from. This is where rigid, controlling, and defensive personalities come from. This is where fight, flight, fawn, or freeze literally begins as a pattern of behavior, a survival mechanism. And that is basically the crux of codependency, my friends, and how it all gets started. And like other addictive processes, because codependency really is an addictive process, like any other addictive process, left untreated, codependency gets worse, never better over time. So if you know that you have codependency issues that need to be resolved, when would now be a good time to start doing something about it? Because I can promise you this, it isn't going to go away by itself. These issues are not going to magically disappear when you get the promotion or the next right girl or guy shows up, or whatever it is that you're hoping on the outside is finally going to materialize to fix whatever it is that's going on the inside. It doesn't work that way. Now, with all of that said, let's talk about the 5 core symptoms of codependency. But remember, just like destructive narcissism, codependency is also on a continuum, a spectrum, and codependency can manifest in many ways. However, these are 5 core symptoms that you want to be on the lookout for specifically, so you know exactly what you need to begin to work on. Number 1, codependents are unable to experience appropriate levels of self-esteem. You know, when I think back to myself prior to recovery and prior to even knowing what the hell a codependent actually was, even though I was a first-class champion poster child for codependency at the time, outwardly, I looked very confident, Put me at a negotiating table or in a closing situation in my previous career. Put me in a lot of situations, and I was strong, confident, very self-assured, outwardly. Inwardly, however, was a whole other world. Again, as a result of childhood trauma, a false codependent persona emerges, and at a very young age at that. So young, in fact, that not knowing any better, we believe this to be our true selves, even though we are fully disconnected from the truth of who we are at our authentic core. So what my false persona looked like, part of it anyway, was outwardly very confident, while the truth was, as I said, inwardly a whole other story. I was riddled with self-doubt, guilt, and mountains of shame that didn't belong to me. Shame that fully belonged to the people who perpetrated on me as a child. But I didn't know that pre-recovery. And that was evidenced by my romantic choices, the kind of shit I put up with in my friendships, with business associates, my family of origin, and for much longer than I ought to have. The role of the family scapegoat that I continued to volunteer and put my hand up for until I was 40, my friends. Nobody with a healthy sense of self, a solid sense of self-worth, would ever consider doing that to themselves. But an untreated codependent would, and I did, and it started way back in early childhood. And as a result, I was fully unable to experience appropriate levels of self-esteem and self-worth. And this is true for us highly empathic, well-intended, untreated codependents, even if we appear very confident and high-functioning externally. Why? Because we're very well practiced at putting on this performance our whole entire lives, while others get away with all manner of nonsense at our expense. And as a result, our soul slowly dies, and our inner child, frozen as she or he may be, still hurts like hell. Number 2, codependents have difficulty setting functional limits and boundaries with others. Trouble setting functional boundaries with other people. Sound familiar to anyone? This is very common for the untreated codependent. Now, that said, learning to set healthy functional limits and boundaries with ease and grace and without guilt, shame, or any other discomfort is a lot easier than you might think. It just takes the right techniques, strategies, and the willingness to practice. And if you need help with that, you're likely an excellent candidate for one of my coaching programs. There's a link in the description below where you can apply to see if you qualify for a free one-on-one consultation with either myself or a member of my team. Now, this is for you if you're ready and able to invest in yourself and your healing and recovery journey. If you want the pain to stop. You want to find a way out of the fog, confusion, self-doubt, fear, and anxiety brought on by having been exposed to empathy-impaired emotional manipulators who feel entitled to hurt you, and worse yet, blame you for the hurt they cause. If that's you, the link is in the description below this video. Number 3, codependents have difficulty owning their own reality. In my view, this is often because there has been a significant amount of gaslighting and scapegoating since early childhood, in particular as it relates to the neglect and abuse we actually experienced. What we and others know perfectly well, we lived. And for clarity, gaslighting is when toxic emotional manipulators and destructive narcissists attempt to cause you to doubt your reality. In other words, they do a thing to you, and then according to them, it never happened, even though you know full well it absolutely happened. They say a thing to you and then insist they never said that, even though both you and they know full well what was said. You have that happen enough in your life, especially when it starts at a very young age. I don't care who you are, that's going to mess with you. It causes us to have difficulty owning our own reality, which is why codependency recovery is so vitally important for those of us who have had these experiences. If you wonder why you continue to attract one destructive narcissist after another into your life, this is a big piece of it. And in recovery, we learn how to surround ourselves with safe people. Safe people. Not just any people, safe people. Happy, healthy, well-adjusted, genuinely well-intended, safe people. And we learn to keep our distance from anyone else who doesn't qualify as such, no matter who they are. It's important. Number 4, codependents are unable to take care of their adult dependency issues around wanting and needing. Now, this is the crux of adult-child syndrome, which is part and parcel of codependency. And you know whether or not you have this. You may be very competent in some areas of your life and not so much in others. Adult children of whatever it is, whether that's adult children of alcoholism or adult children of abandonment, abuse, and neglect, either way, you know if this is an issue for you. And here's how it shows up. The adult child is either hyper-responsible or uber-irresponsible, nowhere in between. Maybe hyper-responsible in some areas and a complete and total train wreck in others. Not a lot of in between there. Which means that we are then unable to take care of our adult dependency issues around needing and wanting. Whether that's generating what we need in terms of a consistent income for ourselves, whether that's putting ourselves in a position of having to rely on unreliable people in any way, shape, or form. Whether that's being unable to esteem ourselves, validate ourselves, love and approve of ourselves, and therefore we are always and forever looking outside of ourselves, jumping through hoops for love, validation, safety, security, acceptance, and approval. And typically, we're looking for those things from the very people who have absolutely zero ability, desire, or intention to give those things to us. We have to learn how to meet our own needs, friends, if we ever want to be able to attract healthy people into our lives who can then reflect back to us what we are first able to provide for ourselves and therefore carry. Remember, our outside is always a reflection of our inside. If you want to experience it in your external reality, you must first learn to own, embody, and literally carry it within yourself first. Number 5, codependents are unable to experience and express their reality in moderation. As an untreated codependent, you're either shut down or exploding, numbed out, living life behind a mask on a foundation of denial, secrets, and lies, going through life feeling disconnected, confused, lost, stuck, and unsure. You're either cut off from and disconnected from the truth of what you feel, or you feel everything so intensely you're overwhelmed and hyper-reactive. This is what it means to be unable to experience and express your reality in moderation. It's all or nothing. You think in black and white terms. You feel all of it deeply or you shut down. There's no in between. And what I have to say to you is that there is a better way to go through life, a much easier, more comfortable, peaceful way to live and do life. Living life from a solid foundation of lasting peace, confidence, freedom, as well as abundance. It is possible. In fact, it's actually your birthright, but it begins with you. You have to make the decision. You have to give yourself the gift. It's time now. Now with that, I'm going to call it a wrap. But don't stop now. I have well over 100 more videos right here on YouTube for you to watch to help you better understand the detrimental effects of narcissistic abuse and, more importantly, learn what you need to do now to heal from the abuse so you can start living your best life in peace, confidence, freedom, and abundance. And if you want to go deeper with me, you can go to TamieMCoaching.com and learn about my unique tried and true process garnered over decades of experience and learn how you can become my client.